on, guys? Joe Munoz, OneStepPrep.com. Welcome to another video. And first thing this morning when I walked into the office, I told Shallie when I came in, print me off a list of all of our active A320 members, and she printed me 9 pages. She printed 9 pages, of which I only took a single page because I want to read you off here by name. Some of you, if I don't get to your name, I'm sorry, and I'm only reading first names here. I don't want to, say any last names for those of you that perhaps don't want your name on a video. I understand that. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going through 9 pages worth of our A320 members. But Eunice, Mauricio, Austin, Juan, Tai Kang, Sean, Frederick, Alexis, Kyungmin, Jerome, Josua, Jose, Freddie, Scott, William, Carlos, Tim, Hyunki, Mike, Robin, Graham, Edgar. As you can tell by the names, they're from all over the world. We appreciate you being members with us here at OneStepPrep.com. Francis, Michael, Anthony, Kurt, Kentaro, Lucas, Malik, and Orlando. 1 page of 9. Thank you all for being A320 members with us here at OneStepPrep.com. And more importantly, I hope to see all of you at our January 29th live training presentation on energy management. Those of you that are A320 members, active members, you will have access to this live training that we're going to be doing. If you're not an active member and you want to become one and have your name on one of these lists, if you will, just go to OneStepPrep.com, hit the online courses, enroll in any one of our programs there, and we'll see you at the January 29th live training event. It's going to be at 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right at noon for the lunch break. Okay, I'll be here talking live with you, much as you see me doing here. If you cannot attend at that time, don't worry, it will be recorded, it will be archived, stored in your student dashboard. You can go back and watch it anytime you'd like. Look, I want to talk to you about how does a pilot grade a pilot versus how does a passenger grade a pilot. And we all know very well the passenger grades a pilot based on one thing. If you know the answer, I want you to leave it in comments. I want you to certainly like, share, subscribe to the channel if you like the content we put out. But I want to share with you, a passenger grades a pilot based on what? What do you think is, most of you know, the landing? And it's quite comical. Never mind the pushback, the takeoff, the successful engine start, the successful takeoff climb, cruise phase, the successful descent, the approach. We just flew you from point A to point B safely, perhaps dodging and diverting right around, maybe not diverting, but dodging certainly storms, finding the best ride, going up and down, getting out of turbulence, trying to stay upwind of everything so that we don't get into any disrupted air, try to stay in the smooth air, try to stay out of the weather, try to stay out of, well, make it a smooth ride, if you will. And you can fly a trip from Miami to Los Angeles or Los Angeles to Miami, complete transcon flight, or perhaps even an international flight, 4, 5, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 13 hours long, and the entire thing is graded on what? Right there, folks, the landing. From a passenger perspective, okay, and I'm talking in generalities here. I know that's certainly not the case for all of you passengers out there, but most of the time it's graded on the landing. And of course, well, if it's a great landing, first officers, if it's a great landing, right, take full responsibility. If it's a bad landing, oh, it was the captain that did it. No, I'm kidding. Okay, likewise, captain, no, it was the first officer that landing. Okay, I'm only kidding. Hey, look, the way a passenger grades our flight is different than how a pilot grades our flight. You see, when you're flying with your crew member, you're flying with your crew member. Whether you're the first officer flying with the captain or you're the captain flying with the first officer, whether we know it or not, okay, sometimes we're like, oh wow, that was a really good briefing that this gentleman or this lady just did. Wow, that was a nice approach this guy or gal just did. Wow, that was a really smooth level off they did. Wow, that was some good energy management on that approach. Whatever. Not because you're actively trying to do it consciously, but perhaps even subconsciously, you're just like, wow, that was real smooth. Or perhaps not. Maybe you fly with somebody, they smack the landing on, and you're like, whoa, who put that runway there, right? So how do we grade each other, pilot to pilot? And I can tell you there's a lot of different things that go into this, and certainly from a instructing standpoint, right, we're looking at different things. We're looking at everything from flows. We're looking at briefings. These are all things that you do on normal line flights, right? We're looking at briefings. We're looking at ATC. Is he or she using standard phraseology? Are they saying the word tree instead of 3? Are they saying 5 instead of 5? Which frankly, is it a big deal? No. I mean, not necessarily. I know, it's not like we're going around flying, oh, this person isn't saying it exactly. By no means. By no means, at least certainly, I can speak for myself. I'm not Johnny on the spot. I'm not the uniform police looking for these kind of things. I just go about my business and have a great time doing it. And that's why we all got into aviation, right? Is to have a good time and enjoy what we're doing. But subconsciously, we're looking at these things. Flows, briefing, ATC. We're looking at the rotation rate, right? Takeoff. Was that a smooth takeoff? Are we following the flight director tracking? Okay, in fact, I'm just going to put that on its own line of its own, right? Flight director tracking. These are all things that passengers don't even know we do. They don't know what a flight director is. They don't even know that we have two bars that move around like that, right? Most of them, anyways. Okay, they're looking at your decision making. Are we going left or right around that storm? Do we want to climb or do we want to descend if it's turbulent weather, right? So the ADM, right, aeronautical decision making process. Of course, our situational awareness, approach briefing. And one of these is energy management. I'm going to put this down here on the bottom because, of course, this is on a typical flight, right? We do the pushback, we take off, we cruise, we descend, and then we shoot our approach into the landing runway. And typically, right around this phase, this is really where our energy management ties in. And one of the things that I find is that we never want to be the pilot that is not the efficient pilot. We want to always be the best. It's in our type A personality, pilots, okay, to want to be the best, which is great. Really, I think everybody on planet Earth wants to be the best at what they do, hopefully, right? That's the objective. And part of being the best is operating the airplane as efficiently as you possibly can. You don't want to be the person that goes down too early. You don't want to be the person that slows down too early. Okay, and I'm just speaking from observation. We're still too far out to slow down. We're still too far out to go down. I want to fly a little bit higher, more fuel consumption. I don't want to use the spoilers if I don't have to. I prefer to do a little vertical speed trick. You're doing whatever you can to operate as efficient as we can. We don't want to overuse the brakes, right? We want to take care of the equipment, take care of the fuel efficiency, take care of the passenger comfort, and be efficient. And with energy management, there is a line to be walked between what is efficient and what is safety of flight in terms of stabilized approaches. And of course, with stabilized approaches, the criteria for stabilized approaches is usually, right, most carriers at 1,000 feet. We want to be on, certainly not sinking more than 1,000 feet per minute. We need to be centered on the localizer, centered on the glide slope, on speed, and not sinking more than 1,000 feet per minute, as I mentioned earlier. Now, to do this effectively and manage energy at the same time in a way that leaves you still being the most efficient pilot, sometimes, depending upon ATC environment, we underestimate or overestimate what it's going to take to do certain maneuvers or get the aircraft configured appropriately, in time, positioned properly, lined up on the path, centered on the localizer and glide slope. And so there's different rules of thumb that I like to use. One of which is 30 miles from the airport, I like to be at 10,000 feet minimum with 200 maximum, I should say, with 250 knots. Typically somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 miles from the airport, I like to be no more certainly than 210 knots, preferably 180 knots, flaps 2, or perhaps 180 flaps 5 in the case of a 7.3. 180 flaps 2 and an A320, 180 flaps 5 and a 7.3. Really, it's about the same thing. 210, preferably 180 flaps 2 or flaps 5, or at the very least slowing to that point 10 miles away. I really don't like lining up with the runway any shorter than 5 miles prior. Okay, this is if you're cleared for a visual approach, which really brings me off of the rules of thumb and into the next discussion, which is cleared for a visual approach. More and more, we're getting cleared for visual approaches. In this current pandemic right now, we're seeing less air travel, of course, less demand of air travel, and as a result, less traffic congestion, and also as a result, more clearances to proceed direct to a fix, sometimes the initial or the final approach fix even, and then also airports that you're at 9 o'clock, you're 3 o'clock, you're on downwind, you're high, you're fast. Do you have the airport in sight? And you say, we do, and they clear you for the visual approach, and of course now it's up to you to figure out how do we put this aircraft in a position to be stable. Because you're looking down there and you see the runway and you're high and you're fast and they say clear for the visual approach, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I got to do this. Whereas typically, here's our runway and we get brought in on downwind. Typically we get slowed down, we go down, Sometimes they give us speed restrictions, maintain 210, reduce speed to 170 on base. They bring us in, they vector us typically 3 miles prior to the initial approach fix, way out here. We capture the glide slope from a profile view, right? We capture the glide slope from the bottom like this, from below, just as it should be, and we come on down. But now, when you're cleared for a visual approach, you may find yourself up here, high, fast, needing to get down, glide slope captures from above, you're not configured, you're unstable, and ultimately it leads to an unsafe operation. And all of this goes back to what I was saying earlier. How does a pilot grade a pilot, even subconsciously when we're flying as a crew? We want to be the most efficient. Do not trade safety for looking to be or being perceived to be the most efficient pilot, because what I can tell you is sometimes you underestimate or overestimate what it's going to take, and ultimately we end up in an unstable position, which of course if you do, what do? Well, you just do a go-around, right? But the main thing is I want to share with you some concepts, and I shared with you one already, which is 30 miles away to be at 10,000 feet, no more. Usually, by the way, a STAR, standard terminal arrival route, will descend you to be magically 30 miles away and 10,000 feet. Typically, this is the way they're set up, and of course at 10,000 feet, 250 knots, assuming, right, we're talking here in the US. But there's some other rules of thumb that I like to share with you, okay? And this is really what I'm going to be talking about January 29th at this energy management live training event that we're going to be doing at 12 o'clock. I'm going to be here live, and I'm going to share with you some FMA modes, the difference between thrust idle, the difference between speed mode, the difference between vertical speed and pulling or selecting for an open descent. These are all basically the same, those of you that fly the 7.3, as vertical speed versus level change. Open descent and open climb is level change, or flight level change. It's all the same thing. Fixed thrust, variable pitch. And with that comes the ability to manage your energy differently. And there's a few ways to get down. One can be with a varying FMA mode, such as thrust idle open descent, where we have a constant thrust setting at idle, variable pitch, and we can utilize that fact that we have a variable pitch to get down faster. And of course now, if we go down quickly, we can't do both and slow down, so now we have to get creative with use of spoilers, with use of rolling the speed back, and perhaps we throw vertical speed in there somewhere. These are the concepts that I want to share with you. You see, frequently, if you're not stable at 1,000 feet, it can be a couple of things. You lose situational awareness. This means you don't even know where 1,000 feet truly is over the touchdown zone elevation. Because if you're in Miami, well, it's a sea level airport, so at 1,000 feet, Barrow on the altimeter, you're at 1,000 feet. But sometimes you go to Bogota, Colombia, or perhaps Denver, okay, Colorado. Even somewhere like Seattle, where it's a 400-foot roughly touchdown zone elevation, so at 1,400 feet, you're actually 1,000 feet above the touchdown zone, and it's not at 1,000, because at 1,000 feet now, you're only 600 feet. And so we lose the situational awareness at times, and as a result of that, we're not exactly sure where exactly we need to be stable by. So situational awareness is something I'm going to be speaking about. Sometimes it's not that you lose a situational awareness, but frankly, you just don't know how to put the airplane in a position to be stable by 1,000 feet. You know where that 1,000-foot marker is, but you're not sure how to use the tools in your toolbox, the resources at your disposal in the form of FCU automation selections, configurations with flaps, gear, and spoilers, the use of the autopilot and the auto thrust, and in worst case, when a flight path has to change faster than you can manipulate those things, perhaps just hand fly and take everything off. Those are some things that we're going to be talking about as well on January 29th. And so I hope I find you here. I know for this list of, well, I'm not even sure how many names I named off here. 2, 4, 6, 8. It looks to me to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 on page 1 of at least 9 pages. I hope you join this list. And if you are on this list, I hope you join me on January 29th. It will be recorded. We hope to see you here. It'll be archived, stored in your student dashboard. Joe Munoz and Juan Dominguez, OneStepPrep.com, folks. Hey, I'll see you here in just a couple of weeks.